Hello, I'm Otto, and welcome back to Dyson Sphere program. So in the last episode, we created this blueprint. This is our dark fog farming blueprint, and as you can see, we're still in sandbox mode. And the reason why is because there's a few more things that I wanted to talk about. So I know it seems like I just kind of maybe record for 20 minutes, 30 minutes, 40 minutes, and then post a video and then good to go, but there's actually a lot of testing that happens behind the scenes. I would say that for every 5 minutes of gameplay, there's probably at least maybe an hour worth of testing that I do in between. So our playthrough, we've been going on for maybe, 30 hours or something like that. I've probably put in around 200 to 300 hours in the last couple of months just testing a bunch of stuff. And a lot of times I'll make a build like this and then do some testing. I'll do some testing before, I'll do some testing after. I'll do some testing in sandbox mode, and I'll do some testing out in whatever gameplay that we have active. So in the process of doing some testing after, I kind of discovered that there was a little bit of an issue, and then I realized I had a little bit more to talk about whenever it comes to stuff that we can do in sandbox mode. So one of those issues deals with this blue bar here. So this is supposed to kind of limit stuff that's coming in or out. I find that this is a little bit of a problem. So the problem that I ended up having was I was requesting in some precision drones, and this slot here was left open for the precision drones. In theory and in practice, anything that's in the chest has access to, the BAB has access to anything that is inside the chest that is on top of it, and that is both for importing and exporting. So what would happen was I would bring in some drones here, and then it would be fine. So as the drones started attacking, maybe after I got through a certain amount, there were some weird interactions where just every now and then this would start filling up with the drones, in which case I would have like a stack of 100 each, and there's 12? This is 10 wide. So I would just get like an extra 1,000 for absolutely no reason. So we're going to completely ignore that, and we're just not even going to use that anymore. So I'm going to actually swap these to be on this line instead. We're going to open this wide up. And I'm not going to fill it out, but you get the idea. You can fill all of this in across the board. Just, this one would continue to be the energy shards. And if you have access to my blueprint, then this change is already in effect. So it's not necessarily something you have to worry about. And in the same vein with whenever it comes to these other ones. So this is Deuteron fuel rods. And I had a situation where before Deuteron fuel rods were actually able to be picked up, this started filling up with energy shards. So we're going to go ahead and filter literally everything. That includes everything in the BAB. And that's for exports in this case and imports in this case. So this was the signal towers. Whoops. Yes. Okay, so something else that I wanted to talk about was the storage. So we actually have some room here, and we could add some extra storage. So why might we want to do that? Well, whenever it comes to these items, and some veterans might not even know this, these used to stack to, I think it was 100, but somewhere down the line, they changed the stack size of all of these materials. Currently, the energy shards stack to 2,000, the matrices stack to 1,000, and all the other ingredients or all the other items stack to 500. So that means that in our current ILS, which can store up to 10,000, we're only storing 5 stacks worth of energy shards. Think about that. That's 5 stacks. That's this, which gives extreme value to external storage that is not in the ILS. So if we were to leave this wide open, that means that we could store 120,000 of the energy shards in one single Mark II depot, 60,000 of the matrices, and 30,000 of the other ingredients per chest. We can stack these up, so there is extreme value in having this additional storage. And we have 4 sections where we could actually add this storage. What that ultimately means is you could end up having this, all the items coming in, and then at some point just completely abolish the dark fog and have plenty of materials left over. It would take many hours to get to that point, but let's say that you were trying to mega base or something, and you needed the extra computing power, this is how you would manage to get around that, because the dark fog does tend to take up at least some CPU and GPU usage, right? So this is a way that you would get around that. If you are already in the game and you are looking at this and going, oh, okay, well, he didn't add this to the blueprint, don't worry. You can actually shift these, and even though you may not have access to the actual filters, like even if you were to filter this raw, you can't add these filters in, but if you shift click and then copy it from an existing filter, then it will allow that and set the same filters. So we would just add these in, and this would look something like this. Also, at the point we're at in the game, these can't actually move a full belt or output a full belt, but in the near future, once we get the upgrade, where is it here? The last upgrade where the pile sorter can load and unload simultaneously. These things will move 120 items per second. That is literally the max stack of a full max stack of blue belt. So these will effectively be a belt deterrent. So the belt would basically just go into here first and then output onto this line. And I would maybe strongly suggest that, like, you might be thinking, okay, I could just do an inline splitter and maybe stagger them a little bit and have some storage there, but I would strongly recommend against that, and I'm going to show you why. So since we're in editor mode, there's a few other things that I can show you. So this is the traffic monitor, and in editor, these things can actually be used to generate items. So I'm going to generate iron ore. And so this is generate, and then the other one can be used to consume whatever cargo we have. So I'm going to add in a splitter here to kind of demonstrate what's going on. Give this a chest. We need to give this some power. Thank you, ILS. So you'll see that I kind of already messed up, but whatever. There we go. Yeah, there's some really weird interactions. So anything going into a splitter will come out the same on the other side. So it might be hard to tell with YouTube and the speed at which this is moving, but this is stacked 4 high. And this side over here is also stacked 4 high. If I can get the light reflection. Anyways, you can maybe kind of see it there, that stacked 4 high. This one's a little bit harder to tell. So if you had a situation, and this isn't always the case, but let's say that you actually had some storage in here. So you'll see that whenever I add in storage, now all of a sudden this is just 1 stack high. And then this is going to fill up, and then this won't actually go to 4 high until this completely fills up. And this isn't always the case. Like I said, there's some like weird situations that happen in this game. And this is one of those. So as this gets to a full stack, it'll then transfer back over. If you open this up, sometimes it'll stay, sometimes it won't. But let's say that we have a little bit of an interruption in, like I said, see, it's kind of odd. There's some weird things that happen. So I would say in almost all cases, if you're aiming for a fully stacked belt, you almost always want to use the pile sorter, or before you get to the last upgrade, multiple pile sorters. So that is something else that I wanted to show. And the last thing that I would like to talk about is the dark fog debris. So we have 3 extra slots here, and we have a lot of the BABs, the Battlefield Analysis Base. We have plenty of options to bring in extra materials. So whenever it comes to the extra materials, if you scroll over them, you can see that they have a drop rate. So the super magnetic ring, for instance, is a 1.5% drop rate. This would give us roughly 15 per minute. The copper, as an example, is a 3% drop rate and would give us roughly 103 per minute. So, you know, there's some weird situations that has to do with the drop count versus, you know, whatever. You can see roughly, we'll just go on the output per base. So roughly 103 per minute, 104 per minute versus 15 per minute. These are 100% free. So the fact that we have 3 open slots, we could literally just be creating any kind of materials to bring in. These do not actually affect the drop rates for any of the other items. So we're going to be farming largely exclusively dark fog items and soil up to a certain point maybe. But if it gets to the point where you're like running out of something, you could always add in, like, let's say the turbines or the supermagnetic rings, particle containers, maybe processors or quantum chips, things that you're possibly going to be running out of. In the late game, you could add in the antimatter or the antimatter fuel rods, unipolar magnets, the grading crystals, all sorts of things. And yeah, so I just wanted to kind of talk about that a little bit and have an understanding that I'm not going to be adding them to the blueprints because this is really up to you and your playthrough. For us, we're probably going to be changing this up. So we're probably going to use these 3 initially because, as you will see in the very near future in this episode, we're kind of starting to have some problems with these again. This could always change. Maybe we drop the turbines for processors, or once we get the dark fog leveled up a bit, we could add in the quantum chips. It's something that could change over time. The downside is that to make any of those changes, you would have to come over here and manually change whatever you are changing. So for instance, if we had this bab here and we had this guy on top providing, let's say the supermagnetic rings. You would then have to come in and filter all this, filter this. But if you wanted something different, like the, antimatter, you'd have to then go all the way over here, change all of this, change all of this. So that's why I'm not adding it to the blueprint, is because this is totally up to you, and it could change from person to person based on their playthrough. And I'm also not adding in the storage. I will be adding in the storage manually, hopefully in this episode, because we're gonna go play around with the dark fog for a bit. But yeah, I just wanted to bring that up. So something else is, because we have all of these free ingredients, something else that I was thinking about, which I'm still on the fence, I might not do because there's another build that we're going to make once we get back into the game, is you could totally use this space to bring in, like, let's say copper plates. You could get in copper plates from the dark fog, which is something that can happen pretty early. You would need to then enable copper plates. And then you could also bring in the combustible units, which is this is the ingredients for the implosion cannon ammo. I would probably limit the chests for sure. Do something like that, and then copper would, not that one. Did I not just have a copper? Okay. Well, let's say there was a chest on top. The copper would maybe be 4 times whatever that is. And then you could set up chests similar to these with the splitters and the chest on top, requesting in, and actually make some additional ammo for your implosion cannons. I'm not going to be doing that, and the reason why is because here in a second we're going to jump into our world, and we're actually going to create a new build for the shell sets. I did have a little section carved out in our mall, and I've since changed my mind because, again, I did some testing, I've fiddled around with some things, and I would also like to proliferate this. So yeah, we're just going to make a little build for the shell sets. Okay, so we're going to hop back into our main game. Okay, so we're back in our world, and as you can see, we are standing in front of the strange matter. And the strange matter is not moving, which means we are not producing any graviton lens, not producing any space warpers, which I need to go ahead and grab some. I suggest carrying a lot of these. We can store up to, I think, 800 at the moment. Yeah. And then an additional 20 for our... I'm just going to go a little bit higher because we can add in a permanent slot for this. And then this can draw right from it as long as this is enabled, the auto warper replenish. So that will give us 117 warps before we have to worry about grabbing from this. Again, you don't want to be out in space and not have warpers. I had a situation where I want to say I was chasing the dark fog. We don't have any seeds at the moment. I'm sure we'll get some soon. But I had a situation where I was kind of chasing a dark fog seed, and I wanted to see if I could kill it. And the answer is yes, actually. If you see a seed out here in the wild, you can actually go kill it. They're moving at like 15 or 1800 meters per second, which is slightly slower than your top speed. And I had to keep warping to get closer to them. And yeah, I almost got stranded out here in the middle of nowhere. To give you an idea, the time it would take to travel from, let's say, halfway to the neutron star to here, that's maybe like a 4 to 5, 6 hour trip. Yeah, you don't want to get caught out with your pants down and have no space warpers. Okay, so real quick, something else is the space warpers. There are a lot of things that we 100% want to attach them to. Fuel is going to be one of those. So let's request in some of those. You might also consider doing proliferators, which we have over here. I'm not really going to worry about it just now. I will end up adding space warpers to everything, but at least for the sake of right now, that's a maybe. Foundations is certainly another one. If you wanted to, for instance, completely pave an entire planet, I think it's something like, I think it's either 300,000 or 320,000 foundations. So yeah, that little 10,000 is not going to do much. Okay, so we also want to add in space warpers to the surrounding area, and I did actually make a build for the shell sets, but we're going to be not using this. We're going to make a different build, and the reason why is because I don't know if I miscalculated or what, but I did kind of misunderstand or misinterpret how much of this we would actually need. This is not producing nearly enough, largely because it is limited by the combustible units that we have over here. So we're going to completely remove this. I'll leave the combustible units because I kind of like using them as a weapon. Like, I don't know if I mentioned this in a previous video, but I did go back and test out in, I think it was episode 6 where I tried using these and it really didn't work out for me. Yeah, I went back in and grew a pair and just absolutely annihilated the dark fog. These things are amazing. Anyways, enough about that. So I have requested in some space warpers here, and instead of actually requesting in space warpers to all of these, we're just going to tie them all together with belts. We did leave a section open to allow us to do this. So there's two ways you can go about doing this. You can either pull them from slot 5, which is the slot that they're in here, or if you do not have one, you can use slot 6, which is an unavailable slot that is only available for space warpers. So think of a 6th category here that we can't actually affect, but we can request in, or sorry, drag them in through the belts. So I'm going to go ahead and fill this out, and then I will meet you back on the flip side for the way that we conclude this. Okay, so we have wrapped this all the way back around, and you might be tempted to actually close the circle, close the circuit. And I'm going to suggest that you don't do that, and I'll show you why. So as these come through, these are just going to go in and right back out. So this will not actually get to the quantity that it can hold, which I believe is 50. You can maybe see, it might be a little hard to tell in the video, but this is actually flickering. So it is kind of saying, yes, I have one, no, I don't, but it's largely 0. So I would definitely suggest not actually pulling this all the way back around, and whatever the last section is, just leave it and let them pile up. So this is up to 50 now. This one is now up to 50. This one is at 19, so this one is at 0. Yeah. And I also have already gone ahead and done the other rings. So as you can see, this one has a ring here with a gap. I wasn't able to line them up exactly, so these two are also connected. And like I said, we left room for this intentionally, even when trying to squeeze in a lot of items like we did over in this section. We still left room for the space warpers to go around. I did have a situation that was a little messy with this stone patch over here, but I just buried whatever was here and then allowed the space warpers to go through. Okay, so one last thing before we take off is we need a better build for our the shell sets. So we're going to come over here. We're going to make a little bit of a build before we take off. And yes, because we are using this area, I am obviously planning on having a little bit of a wider build. That is largely what I consider the space to be used for. All right, so we need an ILS. And we need to go back 4 spaces. We'll just line it up with this one somewhere in the middle. Not somewhere, right in the middle. And for starters, we're going to have a return line, but we're going to have a return line that is a little offset. So this is going to be a return line to here. And let's take a look at what all we need. So we have the shell sets. The shell sets need copper, so copper is coming in. These things will absolutely tank your copper. So if you're having any kind of copper problems, this is going to be a struggle. I would highly suggest adding some more. I think the build that we're going to be making will end up using something like close to half of what this build by itself is capable of producing. So yeah, if you're having copper problems, be sure to maybe add, you know, do what we did here with the iron, add in some extra copper to be brought in. So we have copper, and then we're going to need combustible units, but we're not going to be importing the combustible units. We're going to be producing them within the build. So what do the combustible units need? Well, the combustible units need coal, sorry. So we're going to be adding in the coal, and then we obviously also need some space warpers because this is going to be maybe going out. Probably going out. And then the last thing that I want to add in is proliferators. So I want to proliferate this. So we're going to go ahead and bring this in as well. I'm not going to proliferate everything though. I only want to proliferate the ingredients that are going into the shell sets. And then we're also going to be proliferating the shell sets themselves. So if you look, you can see that this contains, one of these shells contains 12 shots for the implosion cannons. If we proliferate this with the Mark III proliferator, this will give us an additional 3 shots per shell. So that is very valuable, especially when we're transporting things across the galaxy. So the proliferator is going to bypass a lot of our build and come in through here. I'm not going to drag it all the way out, but let's just assume that it's coming out to here. This one is going to be coal, and it is going to be the... There we go. The thing that kind of starts our build. So we actually have quite a bit of room to play with here. There's not really any space constraints because we need for the shell sets, we need 2 combustible units every 1.5 seconds. The combustible units are created 1 every 3 seconds. So that means that we need 4 of these for every 1 of the shell sets, and we only really have room to have basically these 5. I should not have deleted that, but whatever. So we're actually going to kind of start up here, but not really. So I want to start closer to the pole. That way we can kind of see like how far can we take these. And I'm just randomly placing them right now because at some point, yeah, right there, you'll see that we will have to tab through. So we at least visually have the spacing now. So I can now delete these and we can get these right up into this. So we're going to have coal coming through here, and then this is going to be the proliferators. So the coal is going to be shared between these two. And then it is going to have an output here. And that is going to share an output with a machine here. But we also need some copper to come through. So this is where this little open section is going to come into play. We're going to have copper coming in, and that is going to go straight through. Okay, well, I didn't think we'd have to tab that early, but sure. And then we need another coal. This coal is going to be shared here. And then same situation, we need an output for the combustible units. We need a copper coming in. And then the last row of assembling machines with its own copper as well. Not as much space as we normally use, but it's still going to be filling out a lot of space. Okay, so same situation over here. We need a coal coming in. No, we have coal coming in. Sorry. Coal is coming in for this one, so we need an output, and then we need a copper line. This one needs its coal. And that shares the coal with this belt, or this this row. Oh my gosh, these ILS. That is an output, and then we need a copper line coming into here. Missed one. And then the last coal. Okay, so before we get anything else set up, we want to go ahead and set up the recipe for the combustible units. And set up these sorters. So this is going to be incoming. These are all going to be incoming on this side. So we have an output here and an output here. This is a copper line, it's just passing through. And this is input and input, whatever. There. This is an output here, output there. Clip that off. And then this is coal in here, coal in there. Okay, so just for the sake of making sure that things kind of stay somewhat aligned in how I build things, I'm going to have this one input from there. Okay, so now we can just drag these through, tab, tab, tab. And no longer need the tab. Nice. Okay, so now each of these lines will be able to create one assembler for the the shell sets. It doesn't really matter where we put them, but we do need to leave some space for the proliferators, the spray coaters. So let's just put them back here, and we're gonna put them right next to these lines. We might as well set this up for the shell sets. So there we go. Eight assemblers with the shell sets. That is input there, and there. Okay, so for the spray coaters, we're going to have the proliferator coming in through here, which means that we're going to need a splitter. And we are going to have it be elevated like this. Let's put the spray coater down first. So this is the output. And let's just figure out where we can actually put this. So this should be fine here. And fine for the incoming as well. As long as all the belts line up, then that is fine. We could have also had a lot of this tighter together, or these more centered. Nah, you know what it is. It is what it is. It's fine. Okay, so now we can put our splitter. And this is why we have the output going not in the middle. All right, so this is the proliferator. Now we can add that back in. Okay, and the last thing that we need is an output. So we're just going to drag these all the way over here. That way we're just proliferating the one belt. We kind of needed it to only be one belt to, you know, have all these other belts coming out, but yeah. And I'm not worried about stacking. It'll be just fine with the regular, the Mark III sorter. Something else we can do actually is, so I have this build over here that I'm not going to be keeping. So we can tell this to go bye-bye. That one can stay up. But the rest of this can go bye-bye. And we can actually use this guy on the back right here to temporarily bring these in. Let's not have this one be local provide. There we go. And then we can proliferate those as well. All right, so we need power. We should just be able to split this. Yep, and then I'll do the same thing on the bottom, kind of split it right in the middle. The center section here, whatever. Good enough for me. And this guy needs power. Okay, and last thing, we just want to bring this in. Yay, now all of those are proliferated. Okay. Let's do 3,000 copper, 1,000 coal should be fine. All right, let's make sure that all of this is working, and then we're going to head to the planet with the dark fog. This is going to be a little bit longer of an episode. I didn't really plan on the first part going that long, but yeah, it's all right. We're gonna get to the dark fog in this episode and start kicking their butts. Okay, so these are all working. This just hasn't gotten there yet. Come on, saturate. Let's go. Okay, that one has coal, that one has coal, so those are gonna be good. And it looks like all of these are working. Okay, so as that gets saturated over time, then this will be just fine. Alright, so we need to head out. So, okay. One thing that I didn't anticipate was that there are actually no dark fog in our local region. And I did have to do a little bit of hunting for them. So I did find a very, very, very good system. And that is going to be this one here, Sadalbari. So we're going to head that way. Now, there's two ways to go about actually making it there. We can't actually see anything because we don't have the last cosmic exploration unlocked. And we can't actually travel this distance in one go. So you can do one of two things. One, we're going to set an indicator. That way we can kind of see which direction to go. You could go to something like Acubins, drop down on a planet. This was well within our travel distance, and then maybe drop some, you know, solar panels or some wind turbines or, you know, some fusion power plants, and then use the wireless power towers to recharge real quick. I'm just going to head right here. We can travel about 8 light years. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to head that way. I'm going to make sure that I have plenty of fuel before I go, and then I'm going to head that way. And then I'm just going to wait out in space to recharge and then warp again. So you can't actually warp until you see the planet map go away. Now at this point we can certainly warp, but like I said, I want to wait a little bit. And then the default keybind for warping is caps lock. It's a little irritating, but it is what it is. Okay, so we are almost fully charged. It would be a lot better if I actually had... You know what? I'm just going to do it. Add some of the proliferated fuel into our inventory. You would be able to make it a little bit farther if you had this inside the fuel Ooh. There we go. Okay, so we can almost make the trip. Yay, our first warp, and okay, I will see you on the flip side. Okay, so as we come up on Sadalbari, we're going to aim for planet 1, and this will automatically stop as long as you are about to hit the planet. Otherwise, you would have to hit caps lock and end it yourself. As you can see, we almost went 9 light years on that fuel. If we didn't have the good fuel in the chamber, the proliferated fuel, then it would probably only take us about 8 to 8.2 light years. So we are aiming for planet 1. There are a lot of dark fog on here, and man, this planet is fast. We're going to be disregarding a lot of the materials on this planet because our only purpose for being here is for farming the dark fog. I also forgot to mention that I did bring a lot of the materials with us that we needed. So I brought some planetary shields, the signal towers, the babs, the ion cannons, and the missile turrets. So I'm going to grab a lot of this. And if you are not sure whether or not you have everything you need, you can actually look at the blueprint and it will tell you, there will be like a red number instead of a blue number if you don't have everything you need. So that's a good way to kind of determine whether or not you have what you need. So there's a few things that we're going to do. One, I'm going to turn off my robots, my construction drones. So we're going to disable them. And the reason why is I kind of want to get some things set up before we actually start dealing with the dark fog. This is kind of a little bit of a tricky situation, so I'm going to hit Control C so that way we can actually look and see. All right, so I'm going to flip this upside down because I think this is probably a good spot. We should be able to farm both of these. So one thing that I also want to point out is the signal tower. So I'm going to place this one right here. And if I click on it, you can see that the kind of agitation range is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5.5 hardline squares away. That is definitely something that we want to keep in mind. We want to be decently close, but not too close. We don't want to... Okay, so what I mean by that is they obviously have like turrets and stuff, so we don't want our stuff to be in range of the turrets, but we also want to be close enough that... Okay, we want to be close enough to agitate the dark fog to come and attack us, but we don't want to be so close that the implosion cannons destroy their buildings, because we want them to be able to produce their units. We want to farm them. We don't want to annihilate them. So that is something that I'm going to be keeping in mind and paying attention to as we're going to place this blueprint. Let me see where we were heading and what side am I on? Okay, so shift clicked over here and then shift click somewhere over here. I do want to be at least somewhat close. Okay, so from here we can actually just try to drop the blueprint. So again, I'm looking at the signal towers largely, and I'm aiming to be at least maybe 5 square... Well, at least 5 squares away from like a central point in between the main body and some of its like external units. So I'm aiming for my signal tower to be somewhere in here. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So yeah, somewhere in here. And then same with... No! Same with up here. We're aiming for somewhere in here, so that's like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So I'm aiming for a signal tower to be maybe somewhere in here, and then maybe somewhere in here. And since we turned off our construction drones, we can actually go ahead and look at this up close to make sure that this is actually somewhere that we want to be. So I'm going to set that up and then take a look. Trying not to get too close. So that's exactly where I want that to be. I want it to be close to the planetary base, but not so close that the laser towers are going to kill us. If you want to actually test it, you can determine whether... No. Okay. Abort. I do not want them attacking me. Yeah. Okay, so let's turn those off. I'm going to hit Z and disable them over here. Okay, so I'm going to take a Tesla tower and just inch it forward, and once this one here starts destroying it, we know we are too close. Alright, that is too close.
Mineral depleted. Building destroyed.
Okay, so now we know we need to back this up a little bit. Okay, so how about we do this? We're gonna determine how far away we can be first, and then use that as kind of a guideline. So that is fine. That is also fine. I thought we were... What? I thought we were this close before. I guess not.
Building destroyed.
Okay, so that's about as close as we can be there. And then if we're lining that up, this is definitely not going to be too close, but let's see how close we can get. And then we will try again over here just to be sure.
Mineral depleted.
That is too close. That is as close as we can be. Okay, so if we follow this line all the way up here, let's just make sure that in the same spot.
Building destroyed.
See, good thing we tested it again. Okay, so that's going to be good enough. We'll use those two markers as our parameters.
Building destroyed.
Okay, so the first things that I want to do is I want to get the PLS that are requesting in items down first. We're going to get the power in around them. These should automatically be requesting, yep.
Mineral depleted.
And then I want to go ahead and start placing some of the fusion power plants down. So really, I probably should have brought some of the ammo with us. The ion cannon, or not ion cannon, the implosion cannon ammo with us. That way we could have a little bit of defenses as we start to get this thing up and running. Once we actually activate our bots, you'll see that this builds itself pretty fast, so it is not really that big of a deal. But as we're waiting for some of the stuff to arrive, we can certainly add in some of these to make sure that the power will actually activate. And we can jumpstart it ourselves a little bit too, so like I'm not too concerned. So let's get the babs down, and any of the power that kind of reconnects all the way to them. Because once we get power going, these babs are just going to take off. And I'm doing the babs on the opposite side of the planet. Sorry, not the opposite side of the planet, the opposite side of where the dark fog is. Okay, we have stuff that has arrived, so we're going to activate our drones again. We're going to activate our military drones. Yeah, look at that. These babs are just going to start building each other, and then this whole thing is going to come together pretty fast. And if we can help it along, we want to try to get the ammo belts going. Now our ammo is starting to saturate. We are up and running. Okay, so there we go. Dark fog has been engaged. If we destroy some of the towers, that's it is what it is. This does splash damage. This does AoE damage, so it is not that big of a deal. The power is good to go. Looks like everything has been... What's going on here? Oh, we just still need some in. Okay, these are all good to go. Looks like everything has ammo. Nobody's giving us any signals except for the planetary shield generators. All right. A little bit of double checking never hurt anyone. Okay, so the dark fog farm is up and running. That is going to be it for me for this episode. So in the next episode, we are on the way home. I'm actually going to tap a few of the veins, so I'm not going to show this, but I can at least describe what we're going to do. So we've got the center of the universe over here. So I'm going to go to this section here, Acubins, and I'm going to tap some of the organic crystal and stalagmite crystals. Maybe even some of the oil and, I don't know, maybe some of the coal and ores that are in this area. I kind of want to hold off on like really going crazy on that, and the reason why is because hopefully we'll be able to get to the advanced mining dude, what is it called? Advanced mining machine. Decently early.
Clusters launching an assault.
For that, we're obviously going to need green science, and then we also need the grading crystals. So this is going to be the next thing on the horizon, the assembling machine Mark III and the miner.
Dark fog
So
clusters
that is what we're going to be
launching an
aiming
assault.
for. And as a matter of fact, between this episode and next, let's just go ahead and unlock some of these. I believe we can go straight to the assembling machine. Yeah. Okay, so we're going to work on some of these in the next episode. That is going to be it for me. I will see you in the next episode, and thanks for watching.